countries in the world like Australia,
Oh wow.
Canada,
What?
Singapore, New
For
Zealand.
real? Wait.
Well, maybe not.
Oh my. Hi
Hi
guys,
guys.
welcome back again to the channel. Today I have a special guest. It's been a minute I, invited somebody here on the channel,
Yeah.
and I'm so excited today to be having
Real react.
yeah, she also have a YouTube channel, Real React. The link will be down in the description box. And today we are going to be checking out something together. I actually invited her here on the channel because we did a reaction to when UK ended slavery.
Yeah,
So this
that's like
video,
over a year or more.
yeah. So we are going to be checking out what did the British ever do for us, and we
Oh,
are
wow.
actually so curious to be doing this one with you guys. But if you're new on the channel, I am Stella. She is Glory. Please make sure you like, subscribe. Also, feel free to use those links down in the description box. That's one way you can support me and the channel. And of course, let's get right into today's reaction.
British, ever do for us scientifically?
Apart from the sanitation, the medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, a fresh water system and public health, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Nowadays, our education system regards the British as brutal colonists who enslaved populations, subjugated the world. Out of roughly 200 countries in the world today, the Brits colonised, settled or invaded
including
about
Nigeria.
90% of them.
Yeah.
Which I think is fairly impressive, or at least I think the Romans would think it was impressive. But would we have been better off without those bastard Brits? Now, as it happens, they may have some redeeming features, if you look at their scientific contribution at least. Now, this is a slightly different video to normal, and I'm going to talk about the British scientific and technological achievements and inventions, even though I could mention trivial things like the British invention of some of the best countries in the world, like Australia, Canada, Singapore,
What?
New Zealand, America.
Wait.
Well, maybe not.
Oh my! I always thought it was just American that British. America actually came out of British. Like American actually came out of British. We know all the
those,
Star Spangled Story banner,
everything.
but Australia,
Canada, New
are
Zealand.
you serious? British is a mother nation.
Invented, but they were certainly highly influenced.
Naturally.
Or even the only decent country in the Middle East, which is Israel, courtesy of Mr. Balfour, and many other countries that have a great deal to be proud of, such as Malaya, South Africa, Fiji, Kenya, Botswana, Sri Lanka, India, all wonderful British creations.
Whoa.
But we're a science channel, and we're going to look at science. Now, the list is long of scientific achievements, and I'm only going to look at the really big ones and some of the more important ones. Let's start.
All right.
Let's start with transport and engines. So the British invented the railways, steel tracks, railway locomotives. In fact, wherever the British went, railways followed. So they put in railways in Germany, India, South America, and of course everybody copied that.
Wow.
Then we have
Everybody
the modern bicycle, initially called the Rover safety bicycle apparently. Chain drive, caster steering and relatively small wheels, invented by the Rover company. In fact, in Poland the word for bicycle is Rover.
Whoa.
And yes, it's the same company that makes Land Rovers. Now, the British obviously invented the first engines, which was the steam engine, and that broke us free from back-breaking animal and human-powered devices. Now, while the British were inventing the steam engine, they of course had to invent the piston, and more importantly, the piston ring that seals the piston, a truly remarkable technological invention which is even now being developed further. And the piston ring is the basis for petrol engines and diesel engines. In fact, virtually every engine. So no Brits, no engines. Next, they invented the first engine-powered ships, obviously steam-powered.
Wow.
Ships' propellers, steel ships, the steam turbine, initially for powering ships, but now it powers...
what it takes to invent a steel ship? Because any steel, like water sucks, like you go down and like it sinks literally. Now making a steel ship,
Actually, I saw a video. They were trying to say ship invention of ship came from Germany or something like that.
I think it's
Maybe
different part
maybe
because
there's a
it's like,
different
yeah.
maybe another kind of ship, right?
I don't think different kind because ship have different section, maybe a particular thing in the ship or
Okay, in the
something.
ship, right? Whoa.
The generators in every coal electricity generating plant and every nuclear generating plant. So that's about 50% of all the electricity that's generated today, all courtesy of Mr. Parsons.
Wow.
Then we have the jet engine. Yes, the Germans independently invented it in the Second World War. The turboprop engine, invented by the Brits, the first turboprop aircraft. So if you don't fly in an airplane powered by a jet engine, which was largely due to the Brits, it's a turboprop airplane, which was invented by the Brits. And of course, the turboprop is the basis of the gas turbine, which is used to generate another 20% of the world's electricity. We also have the modern car layout, front drive, transverse engine, independent suspension, CV joints on the front wheels. Before that, companies tried all sorts of arrangements. So, for example, the Germans famously had the engine and everything at the back, but since 1959, most cars use the mini minor equivalent. Ever been on a vehicle that uses steel wheels? Pretty uncomfortable. But don't worry, the Brits invented the pneumatic tyre. So it looks like the British have invented pretty much everything that runs on the road.
Yeah.
They didn't invent the road, that's just about it. Well, actually they did. Tarmac roads, or tarmacadam, was invented by a Scot and a Welshman. Then we have steel bridges. And here's a very interesting one, the modern traffic roundabout in the 1960s. Now, you might think that roundabouts have been around since way before the 1960s, but the Brits had the inspired idea of changing the rules for the roundabout. In other words, yield to enter, which massively increases the efficiency of the roundabout. Then we have the cat's eye reflector.
What's that?
Caterpillar tracks, which the Brits invented just before they invented the tank. So there's much more we could talk about in terms of transport technology, but we must move on
But there's a lot of
to
impact
other
in transport
industrial and technological stuff. Now, of course, Britain famously started the Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th century, and it's debated why it started in the United Kingdom, but clearly there was something special going on that made that spark. And of course, it started in the textile and agricultural industry. In the textiles, they invented the flying shuttle, powered looms, the spinning mill for making threads. In fact, if you didn't have the Brits, you don't have the very fine modern clothing which we have now, which is also incredibly cheap compared with what it used to be. In the agricultural industries, there are all sorts of mechanical devices like the mechanical seed drill, the haymaking threshing machine, but also really important things like phosphate fertilizer production, selective breeding. But that's just the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. If you're going to have an Industrial Revolution, you need a big build buildings. And so the British gave us Portland cement, a revolutionary type of cement. Where would we be without it? Then we have things like steel boring machines, which
the British invented cement because they needed it to use it in the farm. The big buildings. Guys, these guys are thinking outside the box.
We're outside and outside the world. Wow.
To the steel, the modern lathe, which is ubiquitous in metal cutting. Hyper-accurate machines for measuring things, the micrometer, for instance. You cannot have modern engineering unless you have hyperfine methods for measuring things. We have stainless steel, the production of polyethylene, very famous practice, plastic used in just about everything. The steel hammer for forging steel and making it much stronger. The Bessemer steel process, the first mass production of steel effectively. And then the mass production of glass using the now ubiquitous virtually tin flotation method. All right, let's go a little bit electrical. So the first long-distance communication cables were invented by the Brits, the coaxial cable. This was used for underwater cables to link the UK to America and other places, the first intercontinental communication, the birth of the internet in a sense. It was the first time that we could communicate all around the world. The telephone, Alexander Graham Bell was a Scotsman. The television, liquid crystal, cavity magnetron. You've never heard of the cavity? It's in your microwave, but probably more importantly, the first radars to a large extent used the cavity magnetron, which was a revolution. Then if we go a little bit medical, we've got CAT scanners, ultrasound scanners, the first town to have chlorinated water.
They have,
How about
what was
the
that?
first
What
electronic
did they call that?
program?
Colonizing water.
Colonize. What's that about?
Colonize water is in chemistry.
Oh. Because they showed a bridge
Yeah,
and
a
like
bridge, I
I
was
can't
thinking
relate to both of them together. I think you're a bit outside the frame.
Computer to crack German codes in the Second World War. Accurate navigation using highly accurate clocks, the chronometers, and the first workable atomic clock. Then we have the World Wide Web, a gas stove, tin cans, and a really big one. I know you've been wondering where I get to this one. An alarm clock that makes tea.
Wow.
That makes tea.
Again, I could have added many, many more things, but let's go on to fundamental science, the stuff that all other science and technology actually depends upon. But before we do that, maybe just like and subscribe.
Sure.
How about the discovery of the proton, neutron, and
Electron.
electron? The three building blocks of
Chemistry.
frankly, just about everything, all discovered by Brits. And the Brits also discovered the opposite of matter, which is antimatter, by Paul
How did
Dirac.
they discover this thing?
And more recently, the last
just
particle in the
solution-oriented.
standard physics model of just about everything, the Higgs boson, which was proposed by Peter Biggs. Now let's go a little bit bigger, but not a great deal bigger. The atom, the model of the atom with a hard nucleus with the electrons flying around, was essentially discovered by the British. And I'm being a little bit loose there because there is a famous New Zealander involved with this, but frankly in those days
and there's
Kiwis
Rutherford.
were basically Brits.
Is it biochemistry?
What about biology? Well, in my view, the two biggest advances in biology were both discovered by Brits. The first one is Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. And then you have the discovery of the structure of DNA at Cambridge University. Fundamental molecular biology of which the whole DNA revolution has been based on. And yes, I know Watson was an American and Wilkins was a Kiwi. Anyway, of course, the discovery of the structure meant this explosion in growth of the whole DNA industry, effectively, such as DNA fingerprinting, now invented by the Brits. Now let's go back to more basic, very fundamental, and possibly more important medicine. We have antiseptics, antibiotics, vaccines, all three invented by Brits. But let's go back to physics now. So we have Newton's laws of motion, Newton's laws of gravity.
I hate physics so much.
Where would we be without
know, right?
Sir Isaac Newton? We essentially couldn't predict anything. Back on to the physics, the laws of optics and the way that radio waves travel, light, the laws of electromagnetic propagation in signals and wires, Scotsman James Clerk Maxwell's. You don't have any mobile phones or computers or communication cables without Maxwell. And then we have electromagnetic induction from Michael Faraday's. If you don't understand magnetic induction, there are no electric motors, there's no electric generators. Basically, the whole backbone of the electricity system, you owe it to the Brits. Or in mathematics, and there are a lot here, so I'm going to pick the really big one, which is the invention of calculus. Yes, there was another guy called Leibniz who also invented it at the same time, but essentially Newtonian calculus is at the basis of a huge amount of advanced science of engineering. It's as fundamental as algebra and arithmetic. Now, this list is not complete. there are literally a zillion other things that the Brits have
Zillion
contributed
other
to.
things.
I'm telling you, it can go on and on.
Actually, there is just one more. The Flushing Loo. Now, obviously, much of what those British scientists did was based on other scientists from lots of other countries, and the Brits were just part of this magnificent thing which we call Western civilization. Of course, there were French and there were Germans, and the scientific development and advancement then spread to the United States and now to the Far East. But the contribution of the Brits were utterly fundamental on so many levels. Now, without those advancements, our lives would be short, harsh, and frankly, just bloody horrible. The world's population would still be about 1 billion, which is what it was in about 1800, rather than the roughly 8 billion that it is today without that wonderful science and technology. Now, if you add up all the bad things that the Brits may have done, the Amritsar massacre, the Bengal famine, and all the other bad things that happened, albeit only occasionally considering the attitudes of the times. But even if you add all those up, it's not a drop in the bucket compared with what has been achieved and the lives that have saved. How many lives, how many babies, children were saved by antibiotics and antiseptics, clean water, or the uses of electricity,
now,
communications and transport? Famines are effectively a thing of the past because, well, for one reason, we can ship food around from one place to another very, very easily. Now, look, it turns out that I was born in England, and even though I'm an Aussie, so I am biased. But I don't think it makes sense to be proud of what your ancestors did or were unless there's some evidence that you carry on those ideas, values and traditions. But even if you don't measure up to those ancestors or other people's ancestors, it's just bad form not to appreciate what those people did for us. The contribution of the Brits was truly incredible, and we should all be grateful that they came along and did more than virtually any other group to pull humanity out of the appalling, difficult lives that existed before the 1800s. So, do you think the ledger for those bastard Brits, is it positive or negative?
Bastard Brits.
oh my god,
It's so amazing to see what they actually invented.
yeah, like they literally invented all the foundational things that we need to exist in life,
to survive.
because everything is foundational, but it's crucial. I mean, just imagine if all of that was not invented.
Yeah.
When he started off by saying what the Brits invented, I was expecting him to say something like a whole car, to say something like, to call bigger things.
Yeah.
But the little things that made those things to work is just mind-blowing. And I'm like, how will someone think of this? Because most times we just see the whole, we don't see the inside that makes it work.
Yeah.
And these guys are so good.
So
Solution
smart.
oriented, 100%. Thinking outside the box, 100%. But some of those inventions look like magic to me, because how are you thinking of these things? How do you guys
Did
see
you form
it?
electron, proton, and neutron?
Like, ever since we're in the science class, I've always wondered, how did they come about proton, neutron, electron? Like, all this light wave, sound wave. Were they just thinking? Maybe they were listening to Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd take you out of this world and you begin to see things. God, this is so great.
But seeing their inventions and even the world, the country, their influence is actually like, those countries are like top countries in the world.
Yeah, and even talking about education that he started with, although he didn't really dwell there, trust me, if not because of most of the school that was built, if not for the school that was built in African country, most of us would be illiterate.
Yeah.
I might be speaking one barbarian language to you now. I mean, the Reverend Fathers, the pastors, missionaries. I mean, we became what we are from the education that they founded in our country.
The last thing he said that though they've done something harmful like battle the word, but at the same time,
are they the only ones? People did worse. I mean, when we reacted to how
slavery was
how British ended the slavery, we saw that some Arabians did worse. Hello.
Yeah, actually. But sometimes you just move the bad guy to certain people. It happens that way. And seeing that not only he's actually trying to say that We should not focus on the bad things they've done. We should still give accolades to the little things and the good things, invention they've made to the world. Let me know what you think about this video in the comment section. This was actually very mind-blowing and very thoughtful of him to actually make lists like that. And do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel. Also feel free to use the links down in the description box below, and the link to her channel will be down there. Do well to see our content there, and I really appreciate you guys. Bye for now.
Bye.